Performance Max can work for lead generation accounts. You just got to structure it logically, and you have to have your tracking in play. You have to optimize it for that one single most important conversion action. And then you have to, upload offline conversions and actual revenue if you can. And then if you did everything right, if you've put all the stops in place for it to not go after your already existing traffic, then there's no harm in testing Performance Max.
Hello and a warm welcome to this week's episode of the PPC Chat Roundup, the podcast where, more so in 2025, have fantastic discussions with members of the PPC community, the PPC Chat even community that our lovely friend Julie Beceric started. I'm your host, Anu, recording from my studio here in London, UK, and I use this platform to share not just expert, but also my ideas and considered best practices about paid media and the direction the digital industry is going in. Today, the wonderful voice you heard at that beginning of our intro is my good friend, Boris Beceric. We're stopping there because we had a whole moment before we started recording where Boris actually taught me how to say his last name. So let me try that again. Boris Beceric. Is that right? Oh, fantastic. Boris, welcome to the PPC Chat Roundup podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Anu.
So great to have you here. Boris has been such a fantastic support of pretty much everything I do, whether it's the podcast, whether it's like PPC Live, the events, or just supporting us on each other on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and just our conversations. I've always found you, Boris, just so direct, straight to the point, no faffing. If you're annoyed, you're annoyed. And if you have nothing to be annoyed by, you're happy about it. You tell what's useful. And I think that is very much needed in this industry right now. There's just a lot of people who are trying to put messages out there for the sake of grandiose, making themselves sound like they're very important and they're the first and to know things. But I love the way that your knowledge just cuts through to what we need to be hearing. Yeah, thank you for joining us. And I'm sure the audience today is going to really benefit from that honest, straight to the point and about what we should be talking about. How do you find doing that for yourself, like trying to share knowledge online compared to all the other influencers out there?
First of all, thanks for having me. I don't like to compare myself to other influencers. And if we're being honest, I have a bone to pick with the whole term PPC influencer, but that's where we are, obviously, in 2025. But for me, it's never been about becoming an influencer or becoming an influential figure in PPC or making some sort of list. Like, it always came from a desire to talk about the things that I do on the daily and maybe help someone find a shortcut to something. Not that there are any shortcuts for relearning, but that's always been my thing, just to write direct and not put on a mask and pretend I'm something I'm not, but just to share things I see in my accounts. And if I don't see anything in my accounts that's worthwhile sharing, then I just share memes. And it's worked great for me, I have to say.
It really has. I get so much joy from your memes, for sure. You even got like a meme jumper. The moment, don't you? The one of Homer Simpson.
That's the one, like Homer hiding in the trench. No, it's not the trench.
Into a hedge. Into a hedge.
Of course, it's a hedge. Yeah. And it's been a gift from my wife. Also have matching socks if you want to know.
Wow. Very sad. Lovely. You know what, sorry, I've got to do this. I showed this to Boris earlier on. We were on the same wavelength and I've got ones. And we're talking about this is how, when you have your own money, you become a bit weird. I still need a parent who's going to say no to me to buying some stuff. But it's me. I'm the deciding factor. So.
It's all about being weird, Anu. What's the point of fitting a mold or just being you?
Being me and what brings me joy. And that sponge always consistently brings me joy. So I have no reason.
Exactly.
That purchase.
Right.
Anyway, enough rambling about our quirks. Let's get into our conversation today. Yes, but to start off with, for those who don't know you, shockingly, tell us a bit about you, Boris. Who are you? What part of the world do you live in? And what particularly do you do in the world of paid search?
All right, so I'm Boris. Let's ditch the last name for the moment. I've been working in PPC for the last 15 years. So I did the whole agency circuit. I did the client work, client side thing as well. And then 5 years ago, I decided to start out on my own. And I'm nowadays working mostly in lead generation. Used to start out, when I started out, it was mainly e-commerce. But then somehow I just took a much bigger interest in lead generation. I think it's just much more, there are more facets to it than just in e-commerce where it's buy shoes, yes or no, conversion, yes or no, conversion value, yes or no. It's a bit more nuanced in lead generation. I think that's what I find fascinating. And I'm just constantly writing on LinkedIn about the things that I see in my accounts. That's about it. Like I live in the south of Germany. I have 2 beautiful daughters. I'm married to my wife. We've been together for 21 years now. When I'm not making memes, I like to play the guitar.
Nice. I do own a guitar that is collecting dust right now.
Yeah.
I'm ashamed. Yeah, I need to get back to it. But that is such a lovely synopsis. And I think that's a very interesting part. The one really interesting part that I got from them amongst everything was the fact that you find lead gen a lot more interesting and more in terms of the nuances. I feel like my prejudgment for when I was doing account management was actually lead gen was the boring side of it, and lead gen was you can't really, a lot of the time you're driving to leads. I'm hoping they're good quality, but at least and maybe this is a fault of the Google Ads platform, because I think they help e-commerce both because you can, mostly you can tie a click to a revenue, and then that be like, oh yeah, that click is driving us this amount of revenue, so we're going to spend more because that'll bring us more money. And with lead gen, there's a lot more steps between that lead and a revenue, and it's hard for Google to tie that thing. Do you feel that maybe there's a misconception from everybody, or is that just me?
I don't think that's a misconception at all. I think the prime example for the whole scenario you just described is if you look, or if you rewatch the past Google Marketing Lives, just look at all the case studies they have. None of it is lead generation. Lead gen is the ugly stepchild. Google doesn't want to talk about lead generation, even though they have the tools at their disposal. You can connect CRMs to the platform. You can import leads from offline conversions. You can do all sorts of nice technical things. But for some reason, Google just wants the Nike case study or the New Balance. Here is how New Balance drove incremental revenue while spending 20 millions per month on Performance Max. That's like the stuff Google cares about. So to your point, I don't think lead generation is more boring. Quite the contrary. It's more nuanced because you have to not only optimize for the initial lead, but you have to track and optimize for the later lead stages. You have to know how to import things. You have to know how to optimize campaigns. If you don't have the possibility to import conversions, because probably the conversion window might be 180 days to maybe a year before the final deal is being signed. So it's a lot more complicated, but it's also a lot more interesting in my perspective. And then there's the whole human element, like how good is your sales team actually performing? How quickly are they to pick up the phone? How good are they at sending out proposals, stuff like that. So there's a whole other side to this story where you don't even have direct influence over, but it pretty much directly influences your campaign result.
Yeah.
So that's I think the interesting part. That at least it's interesting to me.
Amazing. You talk about all this human influences and all the extra steps that you can't influence, that influences you. AI, bringing that into that mix. For me, my intelligent instinct is that would be hard for AI. So if there are steps that, you don't even know how to influence, that will influence you. Has AI made things easier or harder, do you feel, for lead gen marketers?
I don't think there's a definite answer to this.
Okay.
So from a workflow perspective, I think many things have become easier.
Sure.
But that's maybe something that's also become easier for e-commerce marketers.
Yeah.
So we're obviously talking about ad copy, landing page copy, persuasive copy, stuff like that. That's, I think, something that can really be sped up when you're using AI. And then, of course, there's a whole other thing with Google using AI and trying to force you into AI adoption and all their recommendations, which is not necessarily always beneficial to advertisers. You got to walk that tightrope, I think, of knowing when to use AI, when to trust it, and when to switch it off. Essentially, let's not forget, smart bidding essentially is AI.
Yes, absolutely.
And we've been using that for ages, more than 10 years, I want to say, at this point. That's AI. So it's not all AI is bad, all AI is good. You got to pick and choose the things that are going to come in handy for you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But do you feel like there is part of that journey that, because from what you were saying, and maybe I didn't get that out enough in that earlier question, I feel that there's part of that journey of being able to do lead gen advertising really well that AI can't touch. That if there are parts of that journey that requires the sales team, how does AI make the sales team better in parts of the process? Would you say I'm right in thinking that when it comes to lead gen, there are definitely parts of that process that AI won't help, or do you think that AI can always help every part of the process of lead gen
I
campaigns?
don't think AI can help with every part of a sales journey, period. But so if we're talking about the sales process, I think there's parts where AI can come in handy.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, as a caveat, then there's going to be privacy concerns and different laws in different regions. But I can think of scenarios where AI can come up with a instant persona of a lead and tell you how to best approach that person.
Okay.
Or AI could come up with a tailor-made sales script for that persona. So I think I'm pretty confident that's something that's already being used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So going back to our normal schedule of questions that we've prepared with, which I think it's a nice way to get into that previous conversation. I feel goes nicely into this next question. What are your biggest frustrations you find in the industry right now? I feel like you slightly touched on one of them where you feel Google is trying to really push AI on us. That sounds like something that is not really ideal. Anything else?
Yeah. So the general frustration with the world right now, I think, accelerated rate of change. So for these last 2 or 3 years, it felt like it's been pretty much relentless. Whereas earlier, no, you could really take the time to digest the new updates that Google pushed out and get to read the documentation and everything. But I feel like these days, it's not even being announced anymore. Like I read so much stuff online about this changed in the Google documentation. Oh, by the way, the auction has changed to whereas now there's auctions for the different ad slots. And apparently it's been like this for years. And I've never heard about it. Would it be nice of them to actually tell us what's been going on for all these years, allegedly? So that's one major gripe I have with Google, if I'm being honest with you. They should be a lot more transparent about what they've been pushing out, where we can read up on the documentation, stuff like that. Then the whole AI thing doesn't really bother me all that much, if I'm being honest with you, because you just got to know when to use it. Certainly it comes in helpful and you shouldn't avoid it at all cost. Otherwise you're going to be left behind. Maybe if I'm having major frustration with AI, it's the way Google pushes it upon unsuspecting advertisers. So people who aren't as tech savvy as maybe we. And I've seen so many accounts where people were led to believe that just ripping up a couple Performance Max campaigns would be sufficient for them to grow a profitable business. I don't think we're at this stage.
No, and you know what? That's the thing. I said that in a webinar I was for Wix about what are your thoughts with AI? And I'm like, I love the potential of AI, but I also hate how people are using it. Oh, I hate what people feel that how far it goes with it. And a really good friend of ours in this industry, Greg Finn of Cypress North in the US,
Yep.
of Marketing O'Clock. We know of Marketing O'Clock. Everybody listens to their podcast. It's the best. And they were saying like around the fact that, look, I feel like I lost my thread. Describing me. It's a love and hate. Yes, I remember it. He was talking about PMax and about how people feel that, they think it's just so easy because it's automation. Like an automation is going to make it so easy. And you just give it a few keywords, do ad copy, and it's just so easy. And it'll do the rest for you. And look, you actually have to put a lot of levers in place for it to do the right thing. It's easy technically to turn it on if you don't care about the results. You're literally like, give me whatever results and whatever nonsense that you're going to give me. But if you actually have a particular target, particular direction, or like a particular campaign that offline is doing, that other departments in that business is doing, that you're trying to make sure that you have an integrated strategy towards, there's a lot of levers you need to turn on and turn off and make sure they're gradually going in the right direction after a few weeks or after a few months that you need to change. It's easy, but it has never needed, our campaigns have never needed as much attention to what we have started. Because I think that's the biggest thing. When I started my journey, like maybe about 15 years ago, the person actually easily turned on the campaign because it was all about who has the most budget, not much competition. Who has the most money? The bids are not that much. There are not too many keywords. Where it was manual bidding, especially for brand. And the performance that was on day 1 was probably like the same performance on day 10 or day 40 or day 50. Now, you put on the wrong bid strategy. In a week later, it's going to tell you did the wrong things. But automated, and you're supposed to use automated. But you're like, nah, you're supposed to make sure that it's going to do the thing that makes sense for your campaign, for your business. And that's why it's also really dangerous for this term of best practice. Everybody was very rampant when I was starting off. And I think the people who I really admire and respect have now been like, it's not about best practice. It's about this worked for us based on a million caveats. And so look out for that. Try it. You won't get the same results as me, but it's definitely what I tried and making sure you put your caveats in place to ensure you see what you wanted to see. So again, love that you already even touched on this bit in our next question, because we talked about how smart bidding is AI. We've been using that for a long while. Is smart and bidding strategies the way to do things? So like smart, let's say, for example, smart versus manual bidding. What would you say is your position on which strategy to use? And under what circumstances? As we just said, there are caveats to everything. Are there case studies for manual to still be there?
So I'm going to preface this by saying it depends.
Yeah, of course.
And there are a ton of cases where manual bidding still has its place. So if we've talked about lead generation. If we're talking about lead generation campaigns in a closed geographic radius, maybe on a tight budget, then manual CPC absolutely has its place. I feel for brand campaigns, manual CPC will always have its place. And then I want to say that for the majority of cases, once you've accumulated enough data, by data, mainly conversions, it'd be almost always beneficial for you to switch over to a smart bidding strategy. And then just make sure you have guardrails in place for the strategy to not go overboard and not spend on astronomically high CPCs, for instance. But usually smart bidding on a large scale outperforms manual bidding for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
But what is the small, unique case studies for manual bidding over a long period of time? Or would you say because we know it depends and it's not every case but is there any example that you could think of the top of your head that?
Like I said in the beginning, think of a plumber in wherever, London, who's trying to attract clients through Google Ads. He's not going to have a budget of 50K a month. right? He's probably going to have 3,000 to 5,000 tops.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the keywords and how competitive they are and how high your CPC is potentially going to be and how your conversion rates are and everything else, you might come to the conclusion that manual CPC might be better for that client. Yeah. So I think more generally speaking, in high competition, high CPC verticals, when you're running on a limited budget, I think manual CPC is the way to go.
Okay. Limited budgets, small budgets, and also the beginning stages. So when it's figuring out, gathering data.
Exactly.
Do manual CPC. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't want to cut you off. I want to. Our listeners get the full weight of your brain right now.
I'm going to tell you what just happened. There was a tiny thought in the back of my head.
And I want to hear it.
No, I forgot about it. That's why I didn't say it.
You have that moment. You was crying and everything. It's like my brain glitched.
Exactly. Well,
I'm bored of that information you want. Comes back later. Just cut me off. Just say, I remember.
Oh, I'll do that. All right. Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
With using for lead gen, that you experiment with PMax for your lead gen clients, what circumstances would you say PMax is ideal?
I hate being that person, but it depends.
Well, it very much it depends.
Yes. So maybe for circling back a bit, like back when Google announced PMax, I was super hyped about the whole thing.
Nice.
I was one of the early adopters and tested it out. And
great.
I think, like pretty much anyone else, then I came to the realization that, it's actually not all that it's made out to be by Google. So it's like this thing that's built to give you conversions. And how does it give you conversions? It looks at the bottom of the funnel. It looks at your brand. It looks at remarketing, even though we know it doesn't do like real remarketing in the traditional sense. Yeah, that was the wake-up moment. But I think PMax absolutely has its place.
Yeah.
Where does it have its place? I think once you've maxed out your more traditional campaign types. So for lead gen, that's going to obviously be the normal search campaigns that you have running for your products or services. Then that's maybe a DSA to capture new searches, maybe broad match to drive some additional automation. And then there might come a point where you'd try a Performance Max campaign and see if it brings you incremental leads. And for e-commerce, I feel it's pretty much the same scenario.
Yeah.
But only in that scenario, the campaign types that you would have to max out first are standard shopping, search, YouTube, remarketing, and then just build a Performance Max or many Performance Max campaigns. Structure them to your business needs or margin structure or product categories or whatever you can think of. And again, I think the goal for Performance Max is not to start your account off on, but it's more to fill in the gaps once you've got the feeling that you've maxed out your traditional campaign types.
Amazing. Yeah. So for even those guys who are like, because I hear a lot of people like, oh, lead gen, I would not use PMax. It's for e-com. It's good to hear that, yeah, there's opportunity once you've maxed out your traditional, to gain that incrementality that you feel like you might need. It's just, it's worth testing.
I believe so. Yeah. And if we can just give kudos to Menachem Ani.
Absolutely.
I think he pointed me in the direction of, hey, actually Performance Max can work for lead generation accounts. You just got to structure it logically, and you have to have your tracking in place, and you have to optimize it for that one single most important conversion action. And then you have to upload offline conversions and actual revenue if you can. And then if you did everything right, and like you mentioned also earlier, if you've put all the stops in place for it to not go after your already existing traffic, then there's no harm in testing Performance Max. Not at all.
Absolutely. I love the sound of that. And what I'll do is that at this stage, try to sniff in like some more pre-max conversation that's going to be happening at the next PPC Live event that's happening on April 9th in Brighton. For those of you are listening from the UK, I really encourage you to try and get there. Go to ppc.live for tickets for that one, because we will be talking about PMax. We'll be talking about how you can gain some of that control. Because I think that's the thing. A lot of people are just wary about the whole PMax will just do anything. And it will if you don't put levers in place.
Yeah.
And that's no lie. You should be a bit nervous about PMax when you're approaching it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. You just need to know how to approach it. And Sophie Fell, who's the head of paid search at Liberty Marketing, is going to be helping us and giving us some like actionable, what you should make sure that you approach, how you approach PMax and what are those levers to pull in place. I felt that we'd have one more time for a lot more questions, but I might have to jump through to some of our interesting questions that we have.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask about single keyword ad group as a single theme, but those kind of things, of the past. And I feel the rhythm of this talk is that it depends, right? On what you wanted.
If I had to quickly answer that question, it'd be like, there is no what's best, because I feel like that answer or that discussion always centers around best practices as put forth by Google.
Yeah.
But here's the question though. Is it our job to build campaigns according to best practices? Or is our job to build campaigns that are best positioned to perform? In some cases, I have seen SKAG campaigns outperform single theme ad groups. Still to this day. So there is absolutely place and time for building single keyword ad group campaigns. Not a lot of the times.
Yeah.
So 95% of the cases, go with the best practices.
Yeah.
But just don't discard something because it's not the best practice anymore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Gems of knowledge there. Now, going into a bit of a personal story of things that may have gone wrong in the past, and older, more knowledgeable Boris, if you could go back, you would do it differently. Can you share like a horror story that you've had in terms of a big mistake that you made, and what was your biggest learning from it?
Oh, just recently I've had a video campaign go bonkers on me in the first day.
Wow.
And overspent by 20x.
Ooh.
So that was nice. That was nice waking up to. But luckily, so if we're looking on the more positive side of things, I reached out to support, and they confirmed, and I checked in the billing section that all these additional clicks and costs actually got refunded to the client. So that was, that's a horror story, but also a feel-good story.
But that was more like an issue of the platform messed up. It was the platform that...
Oh, yeah, it just totally glitched out. And when the listing was like, let's test like all these placements and see how many more conversions we can get.
So, and what I'd like to also touch on is an example of where you were the one, the mess up was on your end kind of thing. How did you get through that?
I can remember a time where I put a campaign live that had optimized targeting checked. So it didn't spend on the actual audience I wanted it to run on. We just branched out and did all sorts of crazy things. That's not a nice realization to have, especially when you consider yourself a pro. Oh, I actually messed up here. I just wasn't vigilant enough to go through all the chat settings and change them and make sure that it actually does what it's supposed to do. But then again, like the thing to remember is we're all just humans here.
Yeah. So
you just got to have to give yourself some grace. And hopefully the client is going to be understanding as well. And if you are transparent about it and say, all right, here's like this mess up that happened and it resulted in an overspend of however many euros or pounds. Here's the steps and procedures I'm going to put in place for it to not happen again. Then it should be fine. I think it starts becoming an issue when you do the same mistake over and over again.
Yeah.
I think that's the main takeaway here.
That is I couldn't have said it better. I mirror that point of view. Be the first that finds your mistake, be transparent about it, let your client know, let them know the steps that you're going to do. You do that and you'll still be trusted, because that's the thing. You don't want the trust to be gone. And the trust can still be kept even after mistake if you're open and honest, which is our problem with Google. I mean, that's why our choice with Google great, because we're like, Google, you said live, you make this available to us months ago, but you didn't let us know.
You have to
Trust you. Google, guys, do better. Own your mistakes and let us know. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, now going on to some lovely, cool exit questions because, we've given our listeners some fantastic knowledge there. What's one piece of knowledge in terms of just the industries in general that you want to leave people with?
I just like to say that people shouldn't be so hard on themselves.
Great.
So don't define yourself by the results you drive through Google Ads. There's going to be good times. There's going to be bad times. There's going to be so many circumstances where a bad result isn't reflective of your work at all. If you're looking at the current economic climate, a lot of companies are struggling. Discretionary spending is really on the decline, I want to say. So that's going to reflect in pretty much everyone's accounts.
Yeah.
I think. And then it's just have fun with it and find the people you vibe with and enjoy with. And if you can, find a community of like-minded people and try to learn as much as you can. And then the rest is going to take care of itself. Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's always a little if, but
ideal. It depends, right? Going smoothly depending on several caveats, right?
Yeah.
So I tend to ask this next question to when I'm speaking to client side folks, but I feel that you have experience as well in pitching to people from all over the world. You're telling me before the chat that you've got clients in the US and Canada and Europe all over. So what's your advice to freelancers wanting to pitch and turn it to a brand? What's your piece of advice for freelancers and on what's important to a client to hear?
So I don't necessarily, is this question about how to do outreach to potential clients, or is it?
Yeah, it's not about how to do outreach. You've done outreach well, or somehow you got a friend said, hey, this client needs someone and I think you'd be great for it. And I think that first meeting, you're now in that room with the client.
Okay, got it.
To convince them about you're the best person for the role.
Yeah.
A piece of advice of how to approach that kind of meeting.
So I don't have a set process for this. I think what I like to do mostly is get to know the person, really talk to them on a personal level. Don't bore them with all the technical crap. In most of the cases, they're not going to be aware of all the acronyms and CV, or landing page experience, blah, 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 blah. Ditch that crap. Instead, try to understand them, try what brought them to this meeting, ask a lot of questions around their business, around their margin structure, around their sales process, around their USPs, around their competitors, around previous experience they've had with agencies or freelancers. Just really try and make sure you get to the bottom of what is it that a client or a potential client really needs from you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't only help you understand the client and how you might potentially be able to help them, but it also helps you understand which clients to avoid. Yeah. I think that's a big art form in itself. Knowing which industries, which clients to work with, being experienced enough to tell someone, I think I'm not going to be able to help you in this situation because you would have needed sales 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So that's something I always try to establish. Are they desperate? Because that's a loose situation, if we're being honest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's the best advice you've been given?
I think the best advice I've been giving was to always keep learning and to be curious and to try and enjoy the thing that I'm doing on a daily basis. I think it's no good if for people to work with Google Ads just because it's their profession. Yeah. And I fully realize that some people don't have a choice because you have to put food on the table. But if we're spending so many hours in our lives with work, then it better be something you can get some enjoyment out of. So that's the one thing. And then I think I mentioned it earlier, just surround yourself with like-minded people and happy people. There's this saying, you're the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that holds absolutely true.
Absolutely.
But I'm just trying to surround myself with happy people, driven people, intelligent people, not necessarily working inside of Google Ads.
Yeah.
And I think that's reflective of the type of person I am.
Clearly. Absolutely.
And sure.
And then this is one that I never know whether to ask all my guests, because some people might have experience with this. Some people might not have had any experience with this. Some are just extremely confident and know exactly what they're doing and never make mistakes. Imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome.
Boy, am I the person. I'm the absolutely right person to talk to about imposter syndrome, because I experience this a lot. Pretty much each time I take on a new project, or when I'm consulting with big clients or big holdcos, big agency groups, I've worked on some of the biggest accounts in Europe, if not to toot my horn or anything. And each time I step into a new project, there's this little, like, Boris voice in the back of my head going, oh boy, this is going to be the day they finally find out about you. Yeah, no, I don't think that ever goes away, to be honest with you. So it's just important for you to accept that imposter syndrome is always going to be there. Sometimes it's going to run rampant, and sometimes it's just going to be like a low-level white noise. But you got to learn how to deal with it and not let yourself be distracted.
Yeah.
Always remember, if you've been in this industry for a number of years and you've driven mainly good results for clients, you can't be so shit, can you?
Exactly. Yeah.
Huh.
And there are definitely people who do not know what they're doing.
Oh, some of the accounts I've seen are outrageous. I can't believe these businesses are even still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Would you say you have those moments, you have that voice in the back of your head that's like, how do you push through that voice? What's your tip on just pushing through? What do you like tell yourself? What does the other voice that drowns it out say?
I like to do positive self-talk. So I know there are people who like to do negative self-talk, if that's a thing. Like,
that's weird.
Yeah. Well, I've seen this in many situations. If they hit a wall or something, then they'd be like, come on, you stupid chump, you can do it. Oh, right?
Okay.
And I just like to remind myself of situations I've been in the past that have been way worse. And no client ever ripped my head off or anything. Even when I was at the shittiest of shitty agencies. Like, nothing ever happened. Of course, like, my managers weren't happy when I made mistakes or when things didn't go the way they wanted.
Yeah.
But life goes on. Work isn't the most important thing we should be doing or thinking about.
No. And on that note, I'm not even going to add anything else to that. That is a perfect end. Work is not the most important thing we should be thinking about.
Right.
So much, Boris, for joining this podcast episode. I can't wait for everybody to hear this. I am going to put the most promotion effort behind this episode, because I think every single one, my audience and your audience, should hear that fantastic advice that you've given. Guys, if you have, I hope you've taken some great takeaways. If you haven't, that's on you, because there was so much to take away from this. If people want to ask you more about some of the advice you just given there about lead gen, PMax, whichever, Boris, how can people get in touch with you?
I think the best place would be on LinkedIn. Just drop me a DM if you have any questions, or you could also send a form through my website. That's borisbeceric.com. Other than that, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Enjoyed that.
Yeah, amazing. I really enjoyed that too. I always find it easy talking to you, so I knew that would be an easy. Could I invite Boris? Me and him, we could do this kind of chat for another 2 hours, but
I could do this every week.
You're right. We could do this every week. In fact, Boris, you'll be back on this podcast for sure. We'll be getting you back for more of those questions that I missed out on this list. But any feedback, guys, about the podcast, or even any corrections or anything that you want to share, don't go all negative on Boris. If you want to have negative feedback, send them to me. Send them my way, and me and Boris will chat about whether that's worth anyone's attention. So you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Also, I'm on Twitter, Threads, different platforms on at the Marketing Anu as well. And the PPC Chat Roundup group also has we have our LinkedIn group. We also have We're on Instagram if you want to get snippets from previous episodes. It'll be great for long-standing and brand new listeners. Even if you've just listened to just this episode, please rate the podcast. On Spotify, it's very easy. Just literally just do a star rating out of 5. That really helps with pushing like that indication to others that it's worth listening to. So if you go to linktree.com/PPC chat_roundup, it'll give you the link directly to go for that. And as I mentioned halfway through, PPC Live is happening in just over a month now, maybe just under a month if you're listening to this in late March or April. So yeah, go to ppc.live for your tickets. 3 fantastic speakers. We're going to be talking about PMax. We're going to be talking about data. We're going to be talking about some other stuff that I can't think of the top of my head, but really great PPC stuff. But yeah, brain glitching as well. So let me not stay on the long for too much. Finally, guys, remember, for your campaigns and your businesses to glide smoothly, there is a lot of hard work, a lot of putting controls in place. Don't just set it and forget it. That is needed beneath the surface. So keep your swans kicking. Bye. And thank you, Boris, for joining us this week.
Thanks, Anu. I enjoyed that a lot.
Cheers. Bye.